My girlfriend sat me down and said, "You're draining, give me a break." She picked the quietest corner of the apartment to do it, the little round table by the window that we never used for dinner because it rocked on one uneven leg. She had already steadied it with a folded coaster. 2 glasses of water waited like props between us. The air smelled like citrus cleaner and the lavender candle she always lit when she wanted to make hard things softer. "Can we talk?" she said, and then, before I could answer, she sat. I didn't. Something in me knew that standing would buy me a few extra seconds before whatever this was changed the room. I looked for clues. The couch throw was folded, not tossed. Her phone lay face down, which meant she wanted my full attention and couldn't trust herself not to look at it. The kitchen light was off, the living room lamps were on. That was her serious mix. "Sure," I said, pulling out the other chair. The coaster slid, the table rocked, and for a second I thought the wobble might derail the moment. It didn't. She took a breath and met my eyes with the kind of steady gaze you practice in a mirror. "Honestly," she said, and the word landed on the table like a paperweight, "you're draining. Give me a break." I blinked. The sentence came out so clean, so rehearsed, that I had to repeat it in my head to make sure it belonged to the air and not to some late-night worry that had spilled into day. "You're draining. Give me a break." "What do you mean?" I asked. Not defensive, not yet. Just gathering. She looked relieved to have the line out. "I mean, it's always something with you. Work stress. Foot ache. The upstairs neighbor being loud. The bus running late. I feel like I spend my days untangling your knots, and then I have no energy left for mine." I thought about last week when she called me from her office bathroom because her boss had given her a deadline no human being could meet, and I stood outside her building with coffee in each hand until her lunch break so we could walk a loop and breathe. I thought about the winter I learned how to cook soup from scratch because she caught every cold the city had to offer. I thought about the day her tire blew on the highway and I left a meeting mid-sentence to sit on the shoulder with her until the tow truck arrived. Maybe I looked like I was doing the math, because she reached across the table, palm up, as if to show me her work. "I'm not saying you're a bad person," she said. "You're not. You're kind. You show up. But it's heavy here. I wake up and it's heavy. I go to sleep and it's heavy. I need a break from this." She didn't wave her hands around the apartment. She didn't point at me. She pointed at the air between us. The space where we kept the shared calendar and the inside jokes and the unspoken favors and the way we navigated crowds by touching the back of each other's jackets. She was asking for a break from the connective tissue. "Okay," I said, because it was the only word I trusted to stand up without wobbling. "How long?" Her shoulders loosened an inch. "A month," she said. "Maybe 2. Just time to reset. No fights. No long talks. Space. And then? We'll see." The wobble moved from the table to my chest. "Is there someone else?" She shook her head too quickly and then slowed it, as if to correct the speed. "No. I promise. I just need quiet. I need to not carry your mood on top of mine." I tried to picture my mood in her hands like a package I'd been placing there every morning without noticing. The idea made my stomach tighten. "Am I that much?" She exhaled. "Lately, yes." I didn't argue with the word lately. The last 2 months had been a grind, my team cut, my hours long, an apartment pipe that clanged at 4 a.m., my ankle twisted jogging down the block because a dog darted without a leash. We had handled each thing the way we always did, together, with lists and humor and late-night noodles, but maybe the sum looked different from her side of the table. I looked at the water glass in front of me and saw the world upside down in it. "What does a break look like?" I asked. "No calls," she said. "No check-ins. If we run into each other, we say hello and keep moving." "You think we'll run into each other?" She looked away. "You know what I mean." I knew. We had built a life with overlapping circles, the coffee shop on Mercer where the barista wrote our names on the same cup when she was feeling cute, the Sunday market where the vendor snuck extra parsley into our bag, the bus route that skimmed the park where we once forgot what time was. She was asking me to redraw my map. "Okay," I said again, because if I didn't keep the word simple I would turn it into a negotiation, and I could tell the negotiation had been closed in a different meeting without me. She stood, which felt like the end of a class. "Thank you for not making this harder," she said, and then, as if she needed a way to care for me without touching me, "Do you want the rest of the pasta?" "I'm not going to eat it." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time at the domesticity of that line. We had always measured peace here by leftovers and shared spoons. "No," I said. "You take it." She nodded, circled the table, and paused behind my chair like she might put a hand on my shoulder. She didn't. She picked up her phone, slipped it into her pocket, and walked to the room we had shared to fold clothes that would now belong to one of us at a time. When the bedroom door clicked, the apartment exhaled in its old creaks and sighs. I sat with the coaster under the table leg and the 2 glasses of water and the candle making its slow lavender argument for calm. My brain did the thing it does when it is trying to be useful, it made lists. What I would need for a month elsewhere. Where I could stay. How to not bleed all over my friends' couches with emotion they couldn't launder. I pulled a duffel from the hall closet and filled it with the basics. A handful of shirts. The book I had been reading in 10-page increments. The sweater she always borrowed because it smelled like cedar. I put the sweater back. My toothbrush went into a zip bag with quiet ceremony. I left the photo strip from the night the power went out and we ate ice cream by flashlight on the floor. Some things don't travel well. When I zipped the bag, she came out of the bedroom with a small stack of my folded laundry and set it by the door. It was a soft act and it hurt. "I'm sorry," she said, and I believed her. Then she looked at me the way people look at airport departure boards, maybe one more delay, maybe not, and said, "Text me when you get where you're going." "You said no check-ins." She almost smiled. "This one's for me." I carried the bag down the stairs alone for the first time in a long time. The stairwell light flickered on and off as if it, too, was uncertain how much attention to give me. Outside, the city was in that half hour where it hasn't chosen between day and night. I waited at the curb for a ride and remembered the first time she said my name like it belonged in her mouth. How small the first beginnings are, how quiet their endings can be. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my manager: "Headcount meeting tomorrow moved to 8. Bring the updated deck. The world does not pause to admire your dramas." I thumbed back a reply and then opened my notes app and wrote, "Break granted." It looked petty and theatrical on the screen, so I deleted it and wrote nothing at all. I checked into a spare guest room at a friend's place 2 neighborhoods away. It had a narrow bed and a view of an alley where a cat patrolled like a veteran. I placed my duffel on the chair and sat on the bed with my hands braced on my knees, as if the mattress were a small boat I wasn't sure would hold me. For the first 2 nights, I did all the wrong things. Scrolled old photos. Played back arguments we never had. Wrote and unsent messages that tried to compress apology and explanation into neat paragraphs. I counted the ways I might have been heavy: the sigh after the elevator stuck, the complaint about the neighbor's music, the ask that she remind me to ice my ankle because I kept forgetting. It's easy to rewrite yourself as the villain if you only collect evidence from one drawer. On the 3rd night, I woke before my alarm with the strange feeling that I was late for something. The room was dark and loose with silence. I made coffee in my friend's too-clean kitchen and stood at the window to watch the alley cat patrol again. The cat moved with a kind of unhurried purpose I envied. It paused at the fence, lifted its head, and then sprang to a sill in a single, decisive motion. It occurred to me with embarrassing clarity that I had left myself in the center of her plan. I was waiting for her month to end. Waiting for the calendar to free me. I had accepted the role of person on break when I didn't have to. A break is not a leash unless you decide to hold the other end. I took a shower, put on a shirt that didn't carry the shape of our couch in its fabric, and walked to the barbershop on the corner that I'd passed for years without entering. The barber nodded me into the chair like I had an appointment with a better version of myself. "What are we doing?" he asked. "Less of what I've been doing," I said. He chuckled and got to work. In the mirror, hair fell in soft commas. I watched my face reappear from behind habits I hadn't named, the constant mild scruff, the look of always being one late night behind. When he finished, I looked like someone who had been awake for his own life. It wasn't a glow-up. It was a subtraction. Back at the apartment, I opened a fresh document on my laptop and began to write, all of it. Not a letter to send, not a manifesto to perform. Just a ledger of the last year, where I bent when I didn't need to, where I asked for help with a tone that made it sound like a burden, where I stopped doing the easy maintenance of being a person, sleep, water, movement, curiosity, and then handed the invoice to her. I wrote the ways I had showed up, too, so I wouldn't stack the case against myself with only one kind of exhibit. By noon I had a list that didn't look like a trial, it looked like a plan. I booked a session with a trainer at the cheap gym near the office, not because vengeance runs on treadmills, but because my ankle needed competence. I emailed my manager asking to present a new idea at the headcount meeting, because even if I was draining at home, I didn't have to be small at work. I texted a friend I hadn't seen in months and said, "Lunch this week?" "I've been hiding." He sent back a time and an address like he'd been waiting for the door to open. That night, I didn't check her social media. I didn't draft an update for a month from now. I put my phone face down and stood at the window until the alley cat made its last round and disappeared under a gate like a good secret. In the morning, I dressed like the meeting mattered and walked into a room of people who could decide my work life with a shrug. I showed the deck, not as a supplicant but as a person who had something to offer. My manager's eyebrows lifted at slide 3. At slide 6, someone asked a question that sounded less like a challenge and more like interest. At slide 10, the vice president said, "This has legs," and I felt my shoulders drop in a way I hadn't felt in months. At lunch, I ate without staring at a screen. On the walk back, I passed our usual coffee shop and didn't go in. Not out of spite, out of kindness to my nervous system. The temptation in stories like this is to jump straight to the montage, watch me become unrecognizable, glow like a movie poster, run past my pain like it's cardboard scenery. But real revenge, if that's even the word, is quieter. It's refusing to rehearse your worst self for an audience that already left the theater. On the 7th day of the break, my phone lit with her name. I felt the pull, the reflex to answer on the first ring, to hope for a sentence that would put the furniture back where it once sat. I let it ring twice. Then 3 times. Then I answered, because I wanted to hear my own voice sound steady when I said hello. "Hey," she said, and there was fatigue in it, and something else I couldn't label. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "You?" "I'm okay." A pause. "I saw you pitched something today." We still shared a few friends at the office. News traveled through the usual pipes. "I did," I said. "That's good," she said. "Listen. I don't want to get into anything heavy. I just wanted to say thank you. For not making it harder." "It's already hard," I said, not unkindly. "Yeah." Another pause. "I'm still going to take the break. I need to. But. I didn't expect you to look," she stopped. "Never mind." "Say it," I said, gently. "Steady," she said. "You look steady." I looked at my reflection in the dark laptop screen and saw a person who had started to hold himself up from the inside. "I'm trying." "Good," she said. "Okay. I'll talk to you when I talk to you." "Take care," I said, and meant it, even as something inside me took a step back from the door and turned toward a different room. After the call, I sat in the quiet until it wasn't a performance. Then I opened my notebook and wrote, "If she comes back, it will be to a different address. Not a street address. A posture." I didn't know then how far I was willing to go. I didn't know what the turn would look like, only that it would not be a scene where I waited in a lobby hoping to be summoned. I had begun to understand that the opposite of draining isn't silent. It's charged. In the alley, the cat leapt to the sill again, glanced once over its shoulder like a dare, and vanished. I smiled despite myself. The table by the window still wobbled back at the apartment, but the coaster would hold. For now, that was enough. A week into the break, my calendar stopped looking like a holding pattern and started to resemble a plan. It wasn't glamorous. There were no dramatic reveals, no sudden offers tumbling in just because I cut my hair and stood up straighter. It was a string of small choices that, lined up, began to look like a spine. Mornings, lift, stretch, ice the ankle without needing anyone to remind me. I learned the names of muscles I'd been blaming for years and realized blame and neglect were cousins. Days, show up early, leave on time, use the middle for work that didn't apologize for its ambition. The headcount meeting had cracked something open. Suddenly, my ideas didn't sound like long emails. They sounded like meetings on the books. When someone said, "Good deck," I accepted the compliment instead of treating it like a mistake. Evenings, one social thing I didn't cancel and 1 hour where the phone lived face down in a drawer. The first time I did that, my hands twitched like I'd left a stove on. By the 3rd night, the twitch was quieter. By the 5th, it had turned into something else, room. On the 9th day, I went back to our old neighborhood to pick up a suit from the tailor, a small shop where the owner called everyone boss and meant it. I almost missed the building because I walked with my head up for once and the city looked taller. When I stepped out with the suit bag over my shoulder, I saw the coffee shop across the street, our coffee shop, the barista with the cat tattoo who sometimes drew a heart in the foam when she was in a good mood. I crossed against the light like I had seniority and walked in. The bell over the door did its old bright thing. The girl behind the counter looked up, grinned, and said my name. Muscle memory is loyal. I ordered something simple and took the seat by the window we never took because it was always too cold from the draft. It was still cold. I left my coat on and watched the street. The doorbell trilled again. I didn't need to turn to know it was her. Presence has a shape. My first instinct, automatic and old, was to shrink, to turn my shoulders so I took up less air, to look busy on my phone so I didn't look like a person waiting. Instead, I picked up my coffee, breathed once, and turned my head. She saw me the same moment I saw her. There was a brief flash of something on her face, surprise, maybe even embarrassment for being caught in a place that had belonged to us. Then she smiled, and the smile was careful. "Hey," she said, walking over. "Mind if I?" "It's all right," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. If the universe insists on a scene, sometimes the kindest thing is to give it a civilized stage. She sat, set her cup down, and studied my face the way a person reads a weather app before a picnic. "New cut," she said. "New habits," I replied. She nodded and took a sip. For a moment, we were two decent people sharing air. Then the wobble found us. She glanced down, adjusted the sleeve of her sweater, and said, "I know we said no check-ins." "We did," I said. "So this isn't a check-in," she added quickly. "More of a bump-in." I let the corner of my mouth lift. A hyphenated exception. She looked relieved at the joke, like a stepping stone had appeared under her foot midstream. "How are you?" "I'm steady," I said, because that was the word she'd chosen and I wanted to use a language we both recognized. "You?" "Quieter," she said. I needed the quiet. "Work's been less loud in my head." I nodded. "We let the city fill the next 30 seconds for us." "I saw your pitch went well," she said. "It did." "I'm glad," she said, and I believed her. Then, as if she had to test the room for cracks, "You're not seeing anyone, right?" "No," I said, and felt the old reflex to justify, to add context, to present a resume of my solitude. "I didn't." "And you?" "No," she said. "I meant it when I said this was about quiet." She looked out the window and then back at me. "You look different," she said. "Not just the hair. Your face. You look rested." "I've been sleeping," I said. She laughed once, short. "That'll do it." We could have ended it there, a polite exchange that proved we were civilized creatures who knew how to steer around the obvious. But the room had been waiting since the sit-down, and it wanted more. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Okay." "When you said I was draining," I began, slow enough not to trip over the old furniture, "did you mean me, or did you mean how I showed up while everything was breaking?" She winced. "Both." The honesty hit like a clean slap. I sat with it. "Fair." She leaned forward, elbows on the table, the way she used to when she wanted to slide a plan across the surface. "You take everything personally," she said. "Not in a selfish way. In a absorbing way. You carry the bus delay like an insult. You carry the missed deadline like a verdict. Your face broadcasts it, and then my face mirrors it, and suddenly the apartment becomes a weather system we didn't choose." "And you wanted a place where you didn't have to be a barometer," I said. "Yes," she said, exhaling. "Yes." I thought about 100 small moments I had let run my day because I had mistaken motion for meaning. "I'm working on that," I said. "Not for you. For me." "I can see that," she said, and her eyes softened, and I knew then that whatever came next would be harder, not easier, because kindness is a kinder knife. She glanced at the clock. "I should go," she said. She didn't move. Would it be weird if I said you look good?" "It would be true," I said, and the joke saved us from a sentiment we weren't hired to manage today. She stood, and so did I. The bell did its bright thing again when she left. I sat for a minute longer, finishing the last of the cold coffee, and didn't feel like I had been knocked over. That felt new. Outside, the air had that metallic edge that makes you aware of your teeth. I checked my phone, 2 emails from work, 1 text from the trainer, a reminder about lunch with my friend I'd promised not to cancel. I walked away from the coffee shop without looking back, not out of theater, but because the street ahead had a green light and my body moved like it wanted what was next. That afternoon, a recruiter I respected asked if I would consider presenting at a small industry meetup the following month. Nothing formal, she said. Just tell the story of the thing you built, what broke, what you learned. I almost said I wasn't the kind of person who talks in front of rooms. Then I remembered that I wasn't the kind of person who slept either, and now I was. Yes, I said, before my old self could submit a veto. Word traveled in the office that I was giving the talk. People I didn't know well started asking questions in the elevator, the casual kind that hides curiosity. It's strange how quickly a reputation will turn once you stop feeding it the same evidence. I had been the reliable deck maker, the steady hand in the late crunch, the person who shrugged off credit because it felt safer. I wasn't ready to be the hungry person with sharp elbows. I was willing to be the clear voice in the room. There's a difference. On the 12th day of the break, a mutual friend texted a group invite to a birthday dinner at a new place downtown. It wasn't a calculated trap, it was life. She would be there. We both knew it. The polite thing would have been to decline and spare the room. The honest thing would be to go and see if my steadiness could hold under dim lights and shared plates. I put on the suit from the tailor, the one that made me stand exactly an inch taller without changing a single bone. The restaurant had the hum of a place that knew it had been talked about. I arrived on time and took the seat the host pointed to. 10 minutes later, she came in with a small group, and for the first time since the sit-down, I saw her without the frame of our apartment around her. She looked good. Not the kind of good that translates into any measurable adjective, just good in the way people look when they've been sleeping and walking and facing their own weather. She saw me, smiled, and there was that same carefulness, but less fear in it. She took the chair 2 down from mine. The room did its usual early dance, menus, water, jokes about prices. Halfway through the appetizers, the friend across from me asked about the talk. The table turned its face toward me. I told the story of the project, not the sales version, the real version, where we broke things and fixed them and learned not to write code at 3 in the morning just to feel heroic. I made a joke that didn't require a follow-up apology. People laughed. When I finished, someone clinked a fork against a glass in a small, polite applause. I didn't blush. I didn't make myself smaller to balance the attention. I took a sip of water and asked the friend next to me about her dog. Later, as we waited for dessert, she leaned over the one empty chair between us and said, "You've changed." "Me or your vantage point?" I asked, calm. She thought about that longer than I expected. "Both," she said. I didn't expect, she stopped. "I didn't expect to feel proud of you from 2 seats away." "Thank you," I said. It was the only answer that didn't turn into a scorecard. On the sidewalk after dinner, people peeled off toward their trains and cars. She and I ended up a few steps apart under the awning. The city was doing its winter sparkle, the kind that makes everything look deliberate. "I'm going to extend the break," she said, not unkindly. "To the full 2 months." "Okay," I said. No wobble. She tilted her head, studied me. "You're not going to ask me to reconsider?" "I'm not," I said. "I'm not on pause." Something unreadable flashed across her face, not anger, not relief. "Respect, maybe." "Good night," she said. "Good night." I turned left, she turned right. I didn't look back because looking back is sometimes a way of stealing from the road ahead. The next morning, I built the skeleton for another talk, this one just for my team. I sent a draft to my manager with a note that said, "If this is too much, say so." He wrote back, "It's not enough," and attached a calendar invite. I added another quiet piece to the plan, a move. Not far, but symbolic. I signed a lease on a small, bright place with a window that didn't need a coaster under the leg of the table. The landlord handed me the keys without ceremony, and I stood in the empty room and listened to the silence like you listen to a new language. It already sounded like mine. On day 15, she texted at 11:41 p.m. "Can we talk tomorrow?" I stared at the screen and let the question sit. Old me would have said yes before the question mark had settled. Numi asked one back. About what? Us, she wrote. Where this is headed. I sat on the edge of the mattress on the floor, I hadn't moved the bed yet, and looked at the blank wall that would soon hold a map or a print or nothing at all. I typed, we can talk. Noon. 20 minutes. The bench by the fountain. If you want more than that, wait for the end of your break. There was a pause long enough for me to hear my heartbeat. Noon is fine, she wrote. I put the phone face down, lay back on the mattress, and stared at the ceiling. The room felt like a held breath. Somewhere inside me, a small voice I had not given enough microphone time said, this is the part where you do not rehearse her lines for her. This is the part where you walk in with your own. The fountain bench at noon was bright and cold. Pigeons did their impossible math. She arrived in a coat I knew and gloves I didn't. She sat beside me, not too close. You set terms, she said. Not angry. Observant. I did, I said. I'm practicing. Practice on me, she said. A challenge wrapped as an invitation. Okay, I said, and I told her the truth without the old preface of apology. I didn't want to be a person whose weather dictated the room. I also didn't want to be a room that waited for someone else's weather report. If she came back, it would not be the old address. I would not be the man who filled every silence because he was afraid of its vote. I would not audition for a part in a story that had already listed me as a supporting character. She listened. Really listened. I wanted quiet, she said. I thought quiet meant not you. Maybe quiet means not the version of you who was always at a 10. Maybe, I said. We sat in the kind of silence that had nothing to prove. Then she said, I'm not ready to decide. You don't have to be, I said. I am. She blinked, and for once, I didn't save her from the stillness by adding a joke. I let the words do what they were built to do, draw a line that was also a path. We stood. See you when I see you, she said. Or not, I said, and somehow it didn't break the glass. It clarified it. Back at my new place, I sat on the floor and made a list called after. It had simple lines, talk prep, move day, new groceries that tasted like the next chapter, a message to the trainer about upping the weight on the bar. At the bottom, I wrote one more thing I had been avoiding, call my father. He would say our family doesn't do breaks, he would say to fight for what you love. I would tell him sometimes the fight is learning to fight for the part of you that doesn't want to fight everyone else. At dusk, the alley cat made a guest appearance on the fire escape across the way. It stretched, turned once, and settled with the full weight of an animal that belongs to gravity and nothing else. I envied it less now. I understood we were in the same trade, patrol, adjust, leap when you must. Revenge, I was learning, isn't making someone sorry they lost you. It's becoming the person you're sorry you took so long to find. By the time the 20th day rolled around, the word break had stopped feeling like a sentence and started feeling like an open-ended question. I wasn't waiting for an answer anymore. I was learning how to be the one asking. The move happened on a Wednesday morning. I had just enough boxes to fit into a single van, the kind with faded lettering from a business that had gone under years ago. The driver asked if it was just you moving. I said yes without explaining the whole story, and he nodded in a way that told me he had driven far worse cargo than a handful of boxes and a mattress. The new place smelled faintly of paint and dust. I liked it. It was honest about being unfinished. That first night, I sat on the floor with takeout noodles, no table, no coaster, no old wobble to compensate for. I opened the curtains and let the city pour in, lights, traffic, the occasional flash of a neon sign from a bar I'd never been to. It felt like the room was telling me, you don't have to be the person you were when you walked in. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The talk at the industry meetup was creeping closer. Every practice run in my head was shorter, sharper. I caught myself editing in ways that weren't about fear of judgment but about wanting the words to land. I wanted to sound like I belonged in the room. On the 24th day, I stopped by the gym early before work. My trainer, a wiry guy with an unshakable grin, handed me a heavier barbell than I'd ever tried. You're ready, he said. I thought he meant physically. Halfway through the set, I realized he meant something else. When I left, there was a text from her. Just 4 words, I miss our mornings. It wasn't a bomb. It was a small flare. But I knew the pattern, how a flare became a fire if you leaned too close. I didn't respond right away. I let the words sit there until my heartbeat slowed. Then I typed, I don't miss who I was in them. No reply. That was fine. I hadn't sent it for the reply. The meetup came on the 28th day. The room was smaller than I'd imagined, 30 people, maybe 40, but they were listening, leaning forward in their chairs. I told the story of the project again, but this time I included the parts one used to hide, the mistakes, the wrong turns, the late-night doubts. I didn't frame them as confessions. I framed them as lessons worth paying for. When I finished, there was applause that didn't feel polite. 3 people came up after to ask follow-up questions. One asked if I'd consider mentoring. On the train home, I caught my reflection in the dark glass. Same face. Different posture. That weekend, she asked to meet. Not a bump-in. A real meeting. We chose a rooftop bar neither of us had been to before, neutral ground. She arrived in a dress I'd seen once, years ago, on a night when we were still mapping each other's preferences like territory. She looked nervous. I've been thinking, she said after we'd ordered. About us. About me. About the way I handled. She stopped. You've changed. I wasn't expecting that. And I'm wondering if maybe. I held up a hand, not rudely. Just to stop the sentence before it built a bridge I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. Before you finish, you should know something, I said. I'm not the man you put on break. And I'm not interested in going back to him just to fit where we left off. She looked like she wanted to argue, then didn't. You're saying no. I'm saying I'm not available for the old arrangement, I said. If you want to know the new one, you'll have to meet me here, not back there. Silence. But not awkward. She nodded slowly, like she was filing the moment away. When I left that night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. Like I'd finally stopped walking with one shoe untied. The following Monday, I signed a contract to speak at a larger conference. Paid this time. On Tuesday, my manager offered me a lead role in a new project. On Wednesday, I joined a running group, not to impress anyone, not to check a box, but because the rhythm of strangers' feet on pavement felt like the right soundtrack for where I was headed. By day 30, I had stopped counting. The break, for me, was over. And I realized the real revenge wasn't in proving her wrong, it was in making myself impossible to measure by the version she'd left. It happened on a Thursday evening, one of those early spring nights where the city tricks you into thinking winter's finally gone, only to slap you with a cold wind 2 days later. I'd just finished a run with the group, my lungs still burning in that pleasant, earned way, when my phone buzzed. Her name. No message. Just a call. I almost let it go to voicemail. I almost told myself that was the final, grown-up thing to do, let it ring out and keep jogging into whatever came next. But curiosity is an old reflex, and reflexes don't die just because you've been practicing new ones. I answered. Hi, she said. The word was light but her voice wasn't. Hi, I said, pacing near the park fence to keep my body from cooling too fast. I was wondering, she hesitated, and in the pause I could hear traffic on her end, the muted thrum of a cafe. Could we talk? Not about the break. About starting again. Really starting again. The old me would have taken those words like water in a desert. This version of me recognized them for what they were, a door swinging open after you've already built a house somewhere else. I'm listening, I said, and kept walking. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she went on. I know I was blunt when I ended things. And I know I hurt you. But seeing you lately, at the dinner, at the coffee shop, you're different. And I think maybe we could. I believe you, I said, cutting in gently. But I'm not looking for maybe. Silence. A bus groaned past on her end. I don't mean to sound cold, I continued, but you asked for space, and I took it seriously. I built something in it. And now I'm in a different place. If we were to start again, it wouldn't be a rewind. It would have to be something new entirely. And I don't think you're asking for that. I think you're asking for the old comfort with new polish. That's not fair, she said. There was no anger in it, just that quiet sting of someone realizing the script they rehearsed isn't landing. Maybe not, I said. But it's honest. The truth was, even as I stood there with the phone warm against my cheek, I was thinking about tomorrow's presentation, about the new apartment that still smelled faintly of fresh paint, about the run I wanted to do Saturday morning with people who had no idea about my history and liked me anyway. I wasn't thinking about us. Not in the old, obsessive loop that used to drain my days. And that, more than anything I could have said, told me the break was over, on my terms. When we hung up, I didn't feel the drop I used to feel when conversations with her ended without a resolution. I felt weightless. I jogged the last half-mile home under streetlights just starting to buzz on, my breath visible in the cool air. The next week, my conference talk went better than I could have imagined. People I'd never met quoted me back to myself afterward. One even asked if I had a website or a newsletter. I laughed and said no, but walking back to my hotel, I thought, maybe I should. On the flight home, I opened my laptop and started drafting ideas, talks, essays, things I wished I'd read when I was the person sitting at that wobbly table hearing, "You're draining," for the first time. The revenge, I realized, wasn't her seeing me succeed. It was me forgetting to wonder if she was watching. By the time my plane touched down, the part of my life that revolved around her had finally spun out of orbit. It was a month after that last call when I saw her again, by accident, or maybe because the city enjoys its little dramas. I'd been invited to speak at a corporate leadership event in one of those glass and steel downtown towers that feel like they've been airlifted in from the future. I arrived early, wearing the suit that made me feel like my shoulders had learned a better posture, and waited in the lobby while an assistant checked my name off the list. That's when I noticed her. Across the room, near the cafe counter. Talking to someone I vaguely recognized from her old job. She hadn't seen me yet, so I had time to decide whether to stay in her line of sight or not. A year ago, I would have walked over, heart hammering, ready to decode every flicker in her expression. This time, I stayed where I was. The event was set up in a sprawling conference hall with wide aisles and bright lights. My name was on the program alongside people whose books I'd read in college. I gave my talk without notes, part by choice, part because I'd rehearsed it so deeply that the words felt stored in my bones. When I finished, the applause was sharp, clean, the kind that comes from people who were paying attention. A few came up to shake my hand, swap business cards, ask follow-up questions. I saw her in the crowd, standing back, watching. When the room thinned out, she approached. She looked exactly as I remembered and nothing like I remembered, same eyes, same way she tilted her head when she was searching for the right words, but her presence didn't pull me in like it used to. "That was impressive," she said. She stopped, searching. "You've really changed." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it, but not in the way she might have hoped. "I didn't know you had this in you," she admitted. I smiled, not sharp, not smug, just steady. "Neither did I. Until I had to find out." She nodded slowly, like she was trying to fit this version of me into the outline she'd kept in her mind. "I guess I didn't expect," she trailed off again. "That I'd be fine?" I offered. "That you'd be, more than fine. The thing about revenge is that the good kind doesn't taste like victory over someone else. It tastes like air in your own lungs, clear and easy." "I'm glad you came today," I said. "But I'm not looking backward." Her lips parted, then closed again. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I understand." We said polite goodbyes. She turned toward the elevators. I turned toward the exit. Outside, the city felt wide open. I had another talk booked for next month. The apartment was slowly filling with furniture I'd chosen for myself. My mornings belonged to me. My calendar was dotted with things that lit me up instead of drained me. As I walked away from the building, my phone buzzed, an email from someone who'd been in the audience, offering a consulting opportunity. I tapped it open and smiled. Her chapter in my life wasn't just closed, it had been filed away, not in bitterness, but in a folder labeled "Things That Built Me." I didn't need her to see me thriving. But she had. And that was fine. Because the real point was this. I wasn't thriving for her. I was thriving for me. And I wasn't about to stop. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.